Welcome back. My parents told me they didn't have $85,000 to save my son's life. They told me to be realistic while my 7-year-old was gasping for air. But less than a year later, they dropped $230,000 on my sister's destination wedding in Italy. They chose flowers, champagne, and a designer dress over their own grandson's heartbeat. Now, 4 years after burying my son alone, the tables have turned. My father is at my door crying, begging for the exact same amount to save their home from foreclosure. They want mercy? Well, I have a plan, and it's going to cost them everything but their house. Stay until the end to see the revelation. Like and subscribe for the conclusion.
We don't have that kind of money just lying around, Leora. You need to be realistic. My father stood in the doorway of my small apartment, arms crossed, his face set in that expression I'd seen my whole life, the one that meant the conversation was over before it had really begun. Behind him, my mother nodded along, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. I stood there, frozen, while in the next room my 8-year-old son slept fitfully, the steady hiss of his oxygen machine the only sound breaking the terrible silence between us. My name is Leora Morgan. I'm 32 years old and I teach middle school science here in Columbus, Ohio. I raised my son alone. His father walked out when Derek was diagnosed at 6 months old, said he couldn't handle having a sick kid. That was 8 years ago, and I'd been fighting this battle by myself ever since. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. The medical bills were spread across my kitchen table like accusatory evidence of all my failures as a mother. $85,000. That was the number Dr. Reeves had given me yesterday. The cost of the experimental gene therapy treatment that could save my son's life. His rare dilated cardiomyopathy wasn't responding to conventional treatments anymore, and we were running out of time. Realistic, I repeated, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Dad, my son might die without this treatment. Dr. Reeves said he has maybe 8 to 12 months if we don't act now. My mother stepped forward, touching my father's arm in that way she always did when she wanted to soften his message but would never actually contradict him. Honey, we understand this is incredibly difficult, but we've already helped you so much over the years. We paid for 3 of his surgeries. We simply can't empty our retirement accounts. We're 60 and 58. We have to think about our own future too. I'm not asking you to empty them, I said, hating how desperate I sounded. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back every penny. I'll get a second job, a third job. I'll do whatever it takes. My father shook his head slowly. Leora, you're barely keeping your head above water as it is. How would you possibly pay us back? You need to be sensible about this. There are payment plans, medical financing options. You should look into those instead. I had looked into them. God, had I looked into them. I'd spent the last 3 weeks researching every possible avenue, calling every number, filling out endless applications. The payment plans would take too long. Derek didn't have years to wait for bureaucracy. The medical financing companies wanted interest rates that would bury me for decades, and most wouldn't approve me anyway because I was already drowning in medical debt from his previous surgeries. I've tried everything else, I said quietly, my hands trembling as I picked up the folder from Dr. Reeves. You're my last hope. The Cleveland Clinic program has limited slots. They need a $25,000 deposit within 6 weeks to hold his place, and then the rest paid over the next 6 months during treatment. Without that deposit, he can't get in, and without this treatment... I couldn't finish the sentence. My mother's expression softened slightly, and for one precious moment, I thought she might convince my father. Her eyes were wet, and I could see her struggling with something. But then my father spoke again, his voice firm and final. We can't do it, Leora. I'm sorry, but we have to think about our own future too. We're not getting any younger, and we can't just throw money at something that might not even work. The doctor said it's experimental, didn't he? What's the success rate? 70%, I whispered. So 30% chance it fails. That's almost a third. He said it like he was running a business calculation, not discussing his grandson's life. They left shortly after that. I stood at the window, watching their BMW pull away from my run-down apartment complex, and felt the weight of their refusal settle over me like a suffocating blanket. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Their luxury car, their comfortable suburban home 20 minutes away with its perfect lawn and country club membership, while I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where I'd given Derek the bedroom and slept on the couch. I walked into his room and sat beside his bed, listening to the steady rhythm of the oxygen machine. His small chest rose and fell unevenly, even with the assistance. At 8 years old, he should have been running around, playing soccer, going to school without needing a backpack full of emergency medications. Instead, he spent most days too tired to do more than watch nature documentaries and draw pictures of the ocean he'd never seen. He looked so peaceful in his sleep, his dark hair falling across his forehead, unaware that his own grandparents had just sealed his fate. The next morning, I sat in Dr. Patricia Reeves's office, the same one where I'd received too many pieces of bad news over the years. The walls were covered with children's drawings, thank you notes from patients whose lives she'd saved. I wondered if Derek's would ever join them. I understand this is overwhelming, Dr. Reeves said gently. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. But I want you to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. She pulled up Derek's latest scans on her computer screen. His ejection fraction, basically how well his heart pumps blood, is down to 18%. A healthy child should be at 55 to 60%. The standard medications and his pacemaker have bought us time, but his heart is continuing to deteriorate. I gripped the arms of my chair. And this gene therapy program? The Cleveland Clinic trial is using a combination of stem cell infusion and gene editing to repair the genetic mutation causing his cardiomyopathy. In early trials, they've seen a 70% success rate for cases similar to Derek's. For those patients, their heart function improved dramatically, some to near normal levels. And the other 30%? Dr. Reeves met my eyes. No significant improvement. But importantly, no one got worse. At worst, we'd be where we are now. At best, she paused. At best, Derek could have a normal childhood, play sports, not need a transplant, live a full life. My throat tightened. A full life, the thing I wanted more than anything for my son. The program requires 3 procedures over 6 months, she continued. The cost is $85,000 total, $25,000 deposit to secure the slot, then $20,000 per procedure for the remaining 3 treatments. I know that's astronomical, but I'll find a way, I interrupted. I have to. Dr. Reeves smiled sadly. I know you will. But Leora, there's something else you need to know. They only have 12 slots for this trial period. Once those slots are filled, they close enrollment until next year. And given Derek's current trajectory, she didn't need to finish. How long do I have to secure the deposit? 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I push them. After that, your slot goes to the next family on the waiting list. 6 weeks, 42 days to find $25,000. I started making calls that very afternoon. I reached out to every family member I could think of, distant cousins, my mother's siblings, anyone who might help. Most offered sympathy and small amounts that barely made a dent. My Aunt Cecilia, my mother's older sister, sent $500 with a note saying she wished it could be more. Every penny mattered, but I was trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. I launched a crowdfunding campaign that night, sitting at my kitchen table until 2 a.m, writing and rewriting the description. I poured my heart into it, uploading photos of Derek's bright smile from before he got so sick, explaining his condition, sharing our story. I titled it, Help 8-year-old Derek Get Life-Saving Treatment. Within 24 hours, my coworkers had shared it across their networks. Teachers from my school donated. Parents of students I taught contributed. The church we occasionally attended passed around the link. By the end of the first week, we'd raised $6,000. By the end of the second week, $18,500. I cried when I saw that number. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life, proof that there was still goodness in the world, that strangers could care more about my son than his own grandparents did. But it still wasn't enough for the deposit, and I had no idea how I'd cover the remaining $60,000 for the actual treatments. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening, 2 weeks after my parents had refused to help. Derek was having a good day, good being relative, and was watching a documentary about marine biology while I made dinner. My phone rang, and I saw my younger sister's name. Leora! Mavis's voice was breathless with excitement. Oh my God, I have the most amazing news! I tried to muster enthusiasm despite the exhaustion weighing me down. What's up? Jeffrey proposed. We're engaged. I stopped stirring the pasta sauce. Mavis, that's wonderful. Congratulations. I know, right? And you won't believe this. Mom and Dad are being so incredibly generous. They're paying for the entire wedding. The whole thing, Leora. Can you believe it? My hand tightened around the wooden spoon. The whole thing? Yes. I just got off the phone with Mom and she said, Mavis laughed, delighted. She said we can have whatever we want. No budget limits. Dad told her, "This is my baby girl's special day and nothing is too expensive." Isn't that amazing? I stood there in my tiny kitchen, medical bills covering every surface, my son fighting for every breath in the next room, listening to my baby sister gush about her unlimited wedding budget. "Jeffrey and I are thinking a destination wedding," Mavis continued, oblivious to my silence. "Maybe Italy. Tuscany would be gorgeous. We're meeting with wedding planners next week. I know the wedding won't be for almost a year. We want time to plan everything perfectly, but I'm already so excited I can barely stand it." No budget limits. The words echoed in my head like a scream. 2 weeks ago, we don't have that kind of money lying around. Today, whatever you want, no budget limits. "Leora, you still there?" Mavis asked. "I'm here," I managed. "I was hoping, I know things are tight with Derek and everything, but would you be my maid of honor? It would mean so much to me." I closed my eyes. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. No rush. Well, maybe a little rush. We need to order dresses in a few months, but take your time." She paused. "How is Derek doing?" I looked toward the living room where I could see his small form curled up on the couch. "He's hanging in there." "That's good. I'm sure he'll be better soon. Kids are resilient, right?" I didn't correct her. Didn't explain that resilience couldn't fix a genetic heart defect. "Yeah. Listen, I need to get back to dinner." "Of course. I'll text you later with wedding details. Love you." And she hung up, and I stood there holding my phone, something cold and hard forming in my chest. A seed of understanding that would take root and grow in the months to come. The months that followed were a blur of desperate measures and mounting despair. I maxed out every credit card I owned, taking out cash advances at predatory interest rates just to cover basic expenses while funneling every other penny toward Derek's treatment fund. I sold my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one thing of value I'd inherited, to a pawn shop for $800. I traded in my reliable car for a 15-year-old sedan that barely ran but gave me $3,500 in my pocket. The crowdfunding campaign slowly ticked upward. By early May, we'd reached $23,000. Combined with the $10,000 I'd been approved for on a medical credit card at 18% interest, I had enough for the deposit. I called Dr. Reeves with shaking hands. "I can do it. I can secure his slot." "Leora, that's wonderful." I could hear the relief in her voice. "I'll contact Cleveland Clinic today. We'll get Derek scheduled for his first procedure in June." After I hung up, I sat in my car in the school parking lot and cried. Relief, terror, exhaustion, it all poured out of me. I'd done it. I'd gotten him in the program. But I still had $60,000 to find, and I had no idea how. Meanwhile, my family's life continued like a freight train on a separate track. Every week, there were updates about the wedding. My mother called less frequently now. Our conversations had become strained since that day in my apartment, but when she did call, it was always about Mavis. "They found the most gorgeous venue in Tuscany," she'd say. Or, "You should see the dress Mavis is considering. It's a Vera Wang." I started keeping notes. I didn't know why at first, maybe just to make sense of it all. I created a Google document titled simply, "The Price," and began listing everything. Every medical bill, every wedding expense I heard about, every conversation, every refusal. In June, Derek had his first procedure. The stem cell infusion went well, though watching them sedate my 8-year-old son nearly broke me. I slept in a chair beside his hospital bed for 3 days, taking unpaid leave from school. Principal Sandra Hayes had pulled me aside before I left. "Take all the time you need," she'd said, pressing an envelope into my hand. Inside was a check for $2,000, her own money. From the teacher's emergency fund, she'd lied, and I loved her for it. The first procedure cost $20,000. I paid it with money borrowed from Principal Hayes at 5% interest, far better than any bank would give me, and what remained of my crowdfunding. That same week, my mother called about bridesmaid dresses. "Leora, honey, we need to talk about Mavis's wedding." I was driving home from the hospital, exhausted. "What about it?" "The bridesmaids' dresses are $350 each. They're these beautiful Amsale gowns in dusty blue. Mavis has her heart set on them. We need you to order yours by next week." $350. That was almost 2 weeks of Derek's medications. "Mom, I really can't afford that right now." There was a pause on the other end. "Leora, this is your sister's wedding. Surely you can make this one thing a priority." "My priority is keeping my son alive. You're always so focused on Derek's problems." My mother's voice took on an edge I'd rarely heard. "I understand he's sick, But life is happening for the rest of us too. This is Mavis's special day. Can't you just try to be supportive? I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Derek just had stem cells injected directly into his heart 3 days ago. He's 8 years old and he can barely walk across a room without needing oxygen. Those aren't problems, Mom. That's my reality. I know it's difficult, but Mavis is only getting married once. We're asking you to buy one dress. Is that really so much? I looked at my bank balance on my phone. $340 until my next paycheck in 5 days. I'll see what I can do, I said quietly. That evening, I ordered the dress on my 4th credit card, the one with 23% interest that I'd been saving for absolute emergencies. My sister's bridesmaid dress apparently qualified. July brought a heat wave and another financial crisis. Derek needed his second procedure, but I was still $12,000 short. I picked up tutoring jobs 3 evenings a week, bringing in an extra $600 a month, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. I moved from my 1-bedroom apartment to a studio in a worse neighborhood. The rent was $350 cheaper, the exact cost of that bridesmaid dress, but the building had mold in the bathroom and I heard fights through the walls at night. Mom, why did we move? Derek asked, looking around the tiny space where his bed was now feet from my pull-out couch. We're saving money for your treatment, baby, and this place is closer to my new tutoring students. He nodded, accepting this like he accepted everything. At 8 years old, he understood economics better than most adults. He knew we were poor. He knew it was because of him. That knowledge killed me a little more each day. In late July, my mother called with news about Mavis's bachelorette party. It's going to be in Napa Valley, just a long weekend. We're renting a villa and there'll be spa treatments, wine tastings, a private chef. I'm so excited. Mavis deserves something special before the wedding. That sounds nice, I said, folding laundry in my studio apartment while Derek slept. It's going to be amazing. Your father didn't even blink at the cost. He said Mavis only turns 29 once, and we should celebrate. After we hung up, I looked up villa rentals in Napa Valley. The kind my mother had described started at $4,000 a night. For a 3-night weekend, with spa treatments, a private chef, and wine tours, they were probably spending $15,000 to $18,000. I opened my Google Doc and added another entry. By August, reality was closing in. I'd scraped together enough for Derek's second procedure, barely, through a combination of borrowing, credit cards, and selling everything I owned of value. The treatment went well. Dr. Reeves said his heart function had improved from 18% to 24%. Progress, but not enough. He needs the 3rd procedure, she'd told me in early September. The first 2 have stabilized him and begun the repair process, but the 3rd treatment is crucial. It consolidates the gene therapy and gives the best chance for long-term improvement. I understand. When? We'd need to schedule it for October, but Lyora... She hesitated. The clinic requires full payment confirmation before they'll schedule. They need to know the $20,000 is secured. How long do I have? They're giving you until September 30th. That's 3 weeks. If you can't confirm payment by then, they'll have to release Derek's slot to the next family on the waiting list. 3 weeks. $20,000. I'd raised $18,500 from crowdfunding months ago. It was long gone. I'd borrowed from everyone who would lend to me. My credit cards were maxed. I was already 2 months behind on my student loans and 1 month behind on my utilities. I had $1,400 to my name and needed $20,000. The math was impossible. I did the only thing I could think of. I called my father one more time. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really hear me. He sighed. Lyora, if this is about money, it is, but please, just listen. I took a breath. Derek has had 2 treatments. They're working. His heart function has improved from 18% to 24%. He's getting stronger, but he needs the 3rd procedure, and I need $20,000 by September 30th, or he loses his spot in the program. Silence. I've tried everything else, I continued. I'm living in a studio apartment with mold in the bathroom. I sold my grandmother's pearls. I'm eating ramen so Derek can have decent food. I'm tutoring until 10 at night. I've borrowed from everyone. You're my last option. I thought the crowdfunding got us through the first 2 procedures, but I'm tapped out, Dad, completely. I'm not asking for a loan this time. I'm begging you. Please, as a gift, save your grandson. The pause felt like hours. Lyora, I can't. Can't or won't. We've committed our liquid assets to Mavis's wedding. Everything's been paid for. The venue, the catering, the flights. We can't back out now. Deposits are non-refundable. Something in my chest went very still. How much did you spend on the wedding? That's not... How much, Dad? Another pause. When he spoke, his voice was defensive. The total budget is around $240,000, but that's been months in planning. We can't just cancel everything. $240,000, I repeated softly. Leora, you spend almost 3 times what could save Derek on a party. It's not a party, it's your sister's wedding. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event for Mavis. And Derek's life isn't once in a lifetime? That's not fair. We didn't know it would come to this. The doctor said he had months. I told you in April. I showed you the paperwork. You knew exactly what was at stake, and you chose her wedding over his life. We chose to honor a commitment to your daughter, your sister. That doesn't mean we don't care about Derek. I laughed, a sound without humor. Doesn't it? The line went quiet for a moment. Then, I'm sorry, Leora. I truly am, but the answer is still no. I hung up without saying goodbye. September 30th arrived like an execution date. I'd spent 3 weeks in a frenzy of desperation. I'd applied to every charity, every grant program, every foundation. Most had waiting lists 6 months long. I'd called the local news stations, hoping someone might run a story. One reporter seemed interested, but said they were already covering another sick child that month. I'd even considered taking out loans from those predatory payday advance places, but they couldn't approve anywhere near $20,000, and the interest rates would have destroyed what little financial stability I had left. When Dr. Reeves called, I already knew what she was going to say. Leora, I'm so sorry. The clinic gave the slot to another family. I fought for you, I really did, but without payment confirmation. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I understand. We'll shift to palliative care. Keep him comfortable. The 2 procedures he's had should buy him some time, maybe 3 to 4 months, and we'll continue with his medications, monitor his heart function. Thank you, Dr. Reeves, for everything you've done. After I hung up, I sat in my car outside the school where I taught. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. Students were flooding out, laughing, complaining about homework, living their normal lives. My son had 3 to 4 months to live because his grandparents needed flowers at their country club reception. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The Google Doc I'd been keeping, the price, was now 47 pages long. Every conversation, every refusal, every dollar amount, every choice. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but as I sat there, watching happy families pick up their children, I made myself a promise. This wasn't over. October arrived with a cold snap that seemed to settle into my bones and wouldn't leave. The shift to palliative care felt like giving up, even though Dr. Reeves assured me it wasn't. We're not giving up, she'd said gently. We're making sure Derek is comfortable and has the best quality of life possible for whatever time he has. Whatever time he has. Those words echoed in my head as I watched my son grow weaker day by day. The improvement from the first 2 procedures was fading. His heart was regressing without that crucial 3rd treatment, and there was nothing I could do but watch it happen. He spent most of his days now in bed or on the couch, too tired for even the nature documentaries he loved. The oxygen machine ran constantly. His lips had taken on a bluish tinge that made my stomach clench every time I saw it. He stopped asking when he could go back to school, stopped talking about wanting to be a marine biologist when he grew up. He knew. In the way children somehow know things adults try desperately to hide, he understood he was running out of time. I'd taken a leave of absence from teaching, unpaid, but Principal Hayes had pushed it through anyway. My financial situation went from catastrophic to apocalyptic, but what did it matter? I needed to be with my son. Nothing else was important. One evening in early October, I was organizing his medications, a task that had become almost meditative in its routine, when he spoke from his bed. Mom, am I going to die? My hands froze. The pill bottle I was holding slipped from my fingers and scattered tablets across the floor. Baby, why would you ask that? He was looking at me with those serious brown eyes, so much older than 8 years should allow. I heard Dr. Reeves talking to you last week. She said palliative care. I looked it up on your laptop. Of course he had. My brilliant, curious son who'd been reading above grade level since he was 5. I sat on the edge of his bed, taking his small hand in mine. What did you find? It means when doctors help you be comfortable because they can't make you better anymore. His voice was matter of fact, but I could see the fear underneath. Right? I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. "It's okay, Mom, I'm not scared. Well, maybe a little." He squeezed my hand. "Will it hurt?" "No, baby." I found my voice, though it shook. "I won't let anything hurt you. I promise. Will you be with me?" "Every second. I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, seeming satisfied with that. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't hear it, "I'm sorry I got sick. I know it's expensive." That broke me. My 8-year-old son was apologizing for having a genetic heart condition, apologizing for the medical bills that had consumed our lives, apologizing for being sick while his grandparents bought $15,000 floral arrangements for a wedding. I gathered him into my arms, careful of his oxygen line, and held him while we both cried. The family interactions during those weeks took on a surreal quality, like I was watching a play where everyone had forgotten their lines except me. My mother called one Tuesday afternoon. "Leora, we really need your measurements for the dress alterations. The seamstress is getting anxious." "Derek is in the hospital," I said flatly. We'd gone to the ER the night before when his breathing had gotten dangerously labored. "Oh no, is it serious?" I looked at the monitors surrounding my son's bed, at the IV in his thin arm, at the team of nurses who'd been in and out all morning. "He's dying, Mom. Yes, it's serious." "You're being dramatic again. The doctor said he had months, didn't he? He still has time. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and the seamstress really does need those measurements. Just text me your current size when you get a chance." I hung up without responding. 2 days later, Mavis came to visit. It was the first time she'd been to see Derek in the hospital, and it would be the last. She stood in the doorway of his room, perfectly put together in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, clutching her Chanel bag like a shield. She looked at Derek sleeping in his bed, so pale, so thin, machines beeping around him, and I saw her flinch. "Hey," she said awkwardly. "Hey." She didn't come any closer to the bed. "How are you holding up? How do you think?" "Right, stupid question." She shifted her weight. "He's so thin." "Yeah." I turned back to Derek, adjusting his blanket unnecessarily, just to have something to do with my hands. "I'm sorry you're going through this. It must be really hard." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Must be." "Listen, I know the timing isn't great, but I wanted to ask, would you reconsider being my maid of honor? It would mean so much to me, and honestly, it might be good for you, to have something to celebrate, a break from all this." I turned to look at her then, really look at her. My baby sister, who I'd read bedtime stories to when she was small, who I'd helped with her homework, who I'd been close to once upon a time. She stood there, in her expensive clothes, asking me to take a break from watching my son die so I could celebrate her party. Get out. What? Get out of this room. Go plan your centerpieces. Go taste your $500 wedding cake. Go enjoy your $240,000 party. Just get away from my son. She took a step back. You can't talk to me like, get out! Derek woke with a start, confused and frightened. A nurse rushed in, alerted by the spike in his heart rate on the monitor. You've changed, Leora, Mavis said, backing toward the door. You've become so bitter. This isn't who you are. You're right, I said quietly, gathering Derek into my arms, whispering that everything was okay. This isn't who I was. This is who you all made me. She left. Later, I learned she'd gone straight to our parents, told them I'd cursed at her, that I was taking my stress out on everyone, that I was being unreasonable and cruel. The family consensus was swift. Leora was having a breakdown. She needed space. It was best not to push her right now. They gave me exactly what they decided I needed. Space, distance. The freedom to watch my son die without bothering them about it. Dr. Reeves called me into her office on a Wednesday morning in mid-October. I'd left Derek with a nurse for just 20 minutes, terrified to be away from him even that long. Leora, I think it's time to consider hospice care at home, she said gently. We can make him comfortable in his own space, with you, without all these machines and hospital sounds. How long? I asked. She met my eyes. Days, maybe a week. I'm so sorry. I called my parents from the hospital parking lot. It took my father 3 rings to answer. Leora, we're right in the middle of the final venue walkthrough with the wedding planner. Can this wait? In the background, I could hear voices, laughter, someone talking about table arrangements. Derek is dying, I said. The words felt unreal coming out of my mouth. Dr. Reeves says days at most. I think you should come to say goodbye. The line went silent except for the background noise. Oh, my father's voice had changed. Oh, Leora, I'm so sorry. Of course, we'll come. We'll come right now. Do you need us to come right now? My mother's voice further away. But the walk through, it's Derek, my father said. We need to go. Oh, God. Okay, we're coming. They arrived 45 minutes later. My father wore business casual, khakis and a polo shirt. My mother was in tennis whites, her hair in a neat ponytail. They both carried Starbucks cups. The juxtaposition was almost funny. Almost. In Derek's room, they stood awkwardly near the door, unsure of where to put their hands, how to arrange their faces, what to say to a dying child. My father approached the bed first. Hey, buddy. Derek's eyes fluttered open. He was on morphine now for the pain, drifting in and out of consciousness. Grandpa? Yeah, I'm here. Did you bring the pictures? My father looked confused. Pictures? From your golf trip. You said you'd show me. His voice was so weak, broken up by labored breaths. I watched my father's face crumble as he realized he'd forgotten. He'd promised Derek 2 months ago that he'd bring photos from his golf weekend in Hilton Head. Had never followed through. I'll bring them next time, okay, buddy? There wouldn't be a next time. We all knew it. My mother stood at the foot of the bed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Real tears, I'll give her that. But then I saw my father check his watch. 15 minutes after they'd arrived, he leaned close to my mother and whispered something. She nodded. We should go soon, he said quietly, but not quietly enough. The florist appointment is at 3. I was standing by the window. I turned slowly. What? We have the final decisions on the centerpieces. If we cancel now, we lose the deposit. It's $5,000. I stared at him. The centerpieces. My mother jumped in. Leora, honey, we'll come back tomorrow morning, first thing. But this appointment has been scheduled for months, and your father's right. My son is dying right now, right here, in this room. And we're here, my father said defensively. But the doctor said maybe a week. We're not missing anything. We'll be back tomorrow. The nurse who'd been checking Derek's vitals actually gasped. She tried to cover it with a cough, but I heard it. You're leaving your dying grandson to pick between roses and peonies. That's not fair, my mother said. We came as soon as we could. We're here now, but we have obligations. Obligations! I laughed, and it was an ugly sound. You have obligations to flower arrangements, but not to this. My father's face reddened. We'll be back tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I promise. Don't bother. Leora, I said don't bother. Go pick your flowers. Go choose your centerpieces. Go plan your party. Just leave. And they left, promising again that they'd return tomorrow, that this wasn't what it looked like, that they cared, they really did. I watched them go, then returned to Derek's bedside. He drifted back to sleep, unaware of the conversation, unaware that his grandparents had valued centerpieces over his final hours. That night, I climbed into the hospital bed with him, careful not to disturb his IV lines, and held him while we both slept. It happened at 3:47 in the morning on Thursday, October 18th. I woke to a change in his breathing. Not the alarms, those were turned off at my request, just a mother's instinct that something was different. His eyes opened, clearer than they'd been in days. Mom? I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I took his hand. It doesn't hurt. Good. That's good. I love you. I love you too. So much, more than anything in this whole world. He smiled, just a little. Tell Grandma and Grandpa, I'm sorry I couldn't wait. My heart shattered. Even now, even at the very end, my son was apologizing to them. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing, Derek. You're perfect. You've always been perfect. Ocean. His voice was barely a whisper. Yes, baby. We'll go to the ocean. You and me. We'll see it together. His breathing slowed. The gaps between breaths grew longer. I love you, I whispered again. I love you so much. One more breath, then another, then nothing. The monitor showed a flat line, but I'd asked them to turn off the sound. The silence was absolute. Derek Morgan died in my arms at 3:52 a.m., 8 years and 7 months old. The death certificate would say dilated cardiomyopathy. It should have said preventable. A nurse came in quietly. She'd been hovering nearby, knowing. She checked for vitals, then looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." I nodded. I couldn't speak. "Take all the time you need," she whispered, and left me alone with my son. I held him for another hour, memorizing his face, his small hands, the weight of him in my arms. When they finally came to take him, I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Find the ocean, baby. Find it and wait for me there." At 5:30 a.m., I called my father. "Hello?" His voice was thick with sleep. "He's gone." "What? Leora?" "Derek died 2 hours ago." I heard him sit up, heard my mother asking what was wrong in the background. "Oh, God. Oh, Leora. We were going to come this morning. We had every intention. He asked about you at the end. He asked me to tell you he was sorry he couldn't wait." Silence. An 8-year-old boy apologizing to his grandparents for dying before they finished picking flowers. "Leora, please don't. The funeral is Friday, 10 a.m., Forest Lawn Cemetery." Another pause. "Friday? That's the rehearsal, and the rehearsal dinner that evening." I waited. "Is there any way to move it? Thursday is open. Or we could do it next week, after the wedding." I hung up. Within an hour, I received a group text from my mother. "Mom, Leora, we're so sorry for your loss. We love you and are here for you. The funeral timing is very difficult with the rehearsal. What if we moved it to 2 p.m. Friday? Then everyone could attend both." I didn't respond. Mavis, "Leora, I'm so sorry about Derek. I know you're grieving, but Mom's right about the timing. If you could move it to the afternoon, the whole family could be there. Otherwise, a lot of people will have to choose between events." Choose between events. My son's funeral was an event that conflicted with wedding rehearsal. I blocked my family's numbers and made the arrangements myself. Principal Hayes drove me to the funeral home. She held my hand while I chose the simplest casket that didn't look cheap. $2,200 paid for with money she loaned me on the spot. She sat with me while I wrote an obituary that I could barely see through my tears. She helped me plan a service for 90 minutes, followed by a small reception at my apartment. I did it all in 48 hours, moving through a fog of grief and shock, functioning on autopilot because I had to. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, appropriate weather for burying a child. I stood at the gravesite at 9:45 a.m. greeting the people who'd come. 23 in total. Principal Hayes and 4 other teachers from my school. Dr. Reeves, who was crying quietly. 6 parents of Derek's former classmates, people who donated to his crowdfunding campaign and actually cared. My Aunt Cecilia, who'd driven 3 hours. 3 neighbors from my apartment building. 2 members from the church we occasionally attended. Not there. My parents, my sister, her fiancé, or any other extended family. The service began at 10 a.m. exactly. The pastor from the local church spoke about children being called home to heaven too soon. I read a letter I'd written to Derek, promising him I'd live enough life for both of us, that I'd see the ocean for him, that I'd never forget him. Dr. Reeves spoke about his brave spirit and his curiosity about the world. Principal Hayes talked about the science projects he'd loved before he got too sick to attend school. The white casket sat surrounded by a single arrangement of white lilies, the nicest I could afford at $175. At 10:35 a.m., I heard a car door slam. They rushed up the small hill where we'd gathered. My father, my mother, Mavis, and Elijah, all dressed in expensive funeral attire. My mother in a designer black dress that probably cost $600. My father in a tailored suit. Mavis in Chanel, complete with oversized sunglasses. 35 minutes late to their grandson's funeral. "Wait," my mother called out, actually running in her heels. "Wait, please." Every head turned. The pastor paused mid-sentence. "We're so sorry we're late," my father said, breathing hard. "The traffic was terrible." And then the caterer called with an emergency about tonight's rehearsal dinner. "Please sit down," I said. My voice was ice. My mother approached me. "Honey, we tried so hard to get here on time, but there was this crisis with the seating chart for tomorrow, and then the caterer needed decisions about the appetizers. Sit down." Something in my tone made her stop. They found seats in the back, and the pastor continued, but I couldn't concentrate anymore. All I could see was them, checking their phones, whispering to each other, my father glancing at his watch twice. When the service ended and they lowered Derek's small white casket into the ground, I stood at the edge and placed a single white rose on top. Others came forward to do the same. My parents approached me as people began to leave. "Leora," my father said, his face showing what might have been genuine grief. "I'm so sorry. We should have been here on time." "But you weren't." My mother touched my arm. I flinched away. "We tried, sweetheart. We really did. But there was this issue with—" "Stop." I turned to face her fully. "Stop talking about the wedding. My son is dead. I don't want to hear about seating charts or caterers or any of it." Mavis stepped forward, her face blotchy from crying. "Leora, we know you're hurting, but it's not fair to take it out on us. We came—" I looked at her, really looked at her, at this woman who was my sister in name only. "You came 35 minutes late to your nephew's funeral because you had to confirm appetizer selections for a party happening in 2 days." "It's not a party," my father started. "It's a party." The words exploded out of me. "While my son is dead, while I just put my 8-year-old in the ground, you're worried about whether to serve shrimp cocktail or crab cakes." People were staring now. The remaining mourners had frozen, watching this family drama unfold at a child's grave. My mother's face went pale. "Leora, please, people are watching." "Let them watch," I gestured to the small crowd. "Let them see what you are. Let them hear about how you spent $240,000 on a wedding while your grandson died because you wouldn't spend $85,000 to save his life." "That's not fair," Mavis protested. "We didn't know." "You knew. I told you. I showed you the medical records, the treatment plan, the prognosis. You knew exactly what would happen, and you chose her party over his life." My father tried to take control. "Leora, this is not the time or place." "Then when is? When would be a good time to discuss how you let your grandson die? Between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding ceremony? Maybe during the reception? Between the champagne toast and the cake cutting?" Tears were streaming down my face, but I couldn't stop. "He waited for you, at the very end. He kept asking when Grandpa was coming, when you'd visit him, and with his last breath, he told me to tell you he was sorry he couldn't wait for you." My mother sobbed openly now. My father's face had gone red. "An 8-year-old child," I continued, my voice breaking, "apologizing for dying before you finished planning your party." "That's enough," my father said, but his voice wavered. "Is it? Is it enough? Because it's not enough for me. It will never be enough." I looked at each of them in turn. "You had a choice. You chose her happiness over his life. You chose appearances over your own blood. You chose to be at a wedding instead of at his bedside when he died." "We were going to come that morning," my mother cried, "but you didn't. You were too busy, and then you were too late, and then you were too late for his funeral because you had to talk to a caterer." Mavis was crying now too. "This isn't my fault. I didn't kill him." "No," I agreed. "You just let him die while you sampled wedding cakes and chose between shades of white roses. That's all." "Go to your rehearsal," I said, my voice deadly calm now. "Go to your dinner. Go to your wedding tomorrow. Dance and drink champagne and celebrate while my son's body is lowered into the ground you were too late to see." "Leora," Aunt Cecilia had approached quietly. I held up a hand. "Just know that I'll remember this. All of it. Every choice, every dollar, every minute you chose her over him. I'll remember." My father tried one more time. "We love you. Get out of my sight." They left, got into their black town car, probably a rental for the wedding guests, and drove away, leaving me standing at my son's grave. Aunt Cecilia put her arm around me. "I'm so sorry, honey, for all of it. Thank you for coming," I managed. "Always." She paused. "And Leora, for what it's worth, you're right to be angry. What they did was unforgivable." After everyone had gone, I stayed. I sat beside the fresh grave, not caring that the damp ground was soaking through my dress, and talked to my son. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry they weren't here. I'm sorry they chose everything else over you. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance a bird called out, "But I promise you this, I won't let them forget. I won't let them pretend this didn't happen. They made their choice. Now they're going to live with it. I stayed until the sun started to set, until the cemetery workers gently told me they needed to close the gates. I kissed my fingers and pressed them to the fresh earth over Derek's grave. Goodbye, my beautiful boy. Go find your ocean. As I walked to my car, I passed a trash can and saw something that made me stop. A wedding invitation, discarded. Fancy cardstock with gold embossing. I pulled out my phone and looked at the invitation I'd received months ago, the one I'd never responded to. Mavis Morgan and Elijah Wright request the honor of your presence, Villa Meditea, Tuscany, Italy, October 27th, 2 days from now. While my son's grave was still fresh, I got in my car and drove home to my empty studio apartment where Derek's bed still sat, his oxygen machine still in the corner, his dinosaur drawings still on the wall. And I opened my laptop. The document titled The Price was now 53 pages long. Every conversation, every refusal, every wedding expense, every medical bill, every moment they'd chosen wrong. I'd been keeping it for months, not quite knowing why. Now I knew. Not yet. I wasn't ready yet. I was too broken, too consumed with grief, too powerless. But someday I would be ready. And when that day came, they would understand exactly what they'd done. Saturday, October 27th, Mavis's wedding day. I woke at dawn in my studio apartment, the silence almost unbearable. No oxygen machine hissing, no monitors beeping, just empty, crushing quiet. I didn't get dressed, I didn't shower, I sat on the floor beside Derek's bed. I hadn't been able to dismantle it yet, and stared at nothing. My phone started buzzing around noon, the family group chat I'd forgotten to leave. Mom, getting ready! Mavis looks absolutely stunning. A photo loaded. Mavis in her $14,000 Vera Wang gown, cathedral train spread across the floor of some Italian villa. Mom, the villa is breathtaking, worth every penny. Aunt Cecilia, private message to me. I'm here at the wedding. I don't want to be. Everyone's acting like yesterday didn't happen. I love you, honey. Stay strong. I set my phone face down and stood. I needed to get out of this apartment, away from Derek's things, away from the notifications celebrating a party that cost my son's life. I drove to Forest Lawn Cemetery. The grave was so fresh the earth hadn't settled yet. There was no headstone. I couldn't afford one. Just a small metal marker with his name and dates. 8 years. That's all he got. I sat beside it for 3 hours talking to him, crying until I had nothing left. They're in Italy right now, baby. Dancing, drinking champagne that costs more per bottle than your funeral flowers. I hope wherever you are, you can't see this. I hope you're somewhere better, somewhere you can finally breathe easy. My phone buzzed periodically throughout the afternoon. Mom, 4:30 p.m. Ceremony starting, so beautiful. Mom, 5:15 p.m. Our little girl is married, proudest day of our lives. Mom, 7 p.m. Reception is magical. Best day ever. So blessed. Each notification felt like a slap. When I finally drove home that evening, I opened my laptop. That document, the price, sat waiting. I added a new section. The wedding day. October 27th. While Derek's grave was 36 hours old, they spent the day in Tuscany celebrating. Total cost of wedding, $240,000. Total cost of saving Derek, $85,000. Difference, $155,000. Or the price of priorities. I saved it, closed the laptop, and began the longest wait of my life. They tried to reach out in the weeks after, half-hearted attempts at reconciliation that felt more like checking boxes than genuine remorse. A card arrived from my parents 2 weeks after the funeral. Hallmark sympathy card, generic message, thinking of you in this difficult time. A gift card to Target for $50 tucked inside. I tore it into pieces. Mavis sent a text in early November. I'm sorry about everything. I hope we can move past this someday. Move past this. Move past watching my son die. Move past being abandoned by my family. Move past the fact that she'd had a $250,000 wedding while my child suffocated. I blocked her number. December brought a Christmas invitation. My mother called. I'd unblocked them temporarily, a moment of weakness, her voice falsely cheerful. We'd love to have you for Christmas dinner. The whole family will be there. We could all use some healing. Healing, as if this was a scraped knee that needed a Band-Aid. I surprised myself by accepting, not because I wanted healing, but because I needed to see them, needed to look them in the eyes and understand how they lived with themselves. Christmas Day at my parents' house felt like entering an alternate dimension. The decorations were extravagant, a 12-foot tree professionally decorated, every surface covered in designer ornaments and garlands. The smell of catered food filled the air. I saw wine bottles on the counter that I knew cost $300 each. They were still living the same life. Nothing had changed for them. Mavis and Elijah were already there when I arrived, showing honeymoon photos from Bali. My parents laughed and oohed over pictures of infinity pools and spa treatments. I stood in the doorway watching them and realized they'd moved on. 2 months. It had been 2 months since Derek died, and they'd simply moved on. No one mentioned him. Not once. Not his name, not the funeral, not the gaping hole his absence left. It was as if he'd never existed. I sat quietly through dinner, observing like a scientist watching an experiment. Mavis talked about wanting to buy a bigger house. My father discussed his latest investment portfolio adjustments. My mother showed off her new country club tennis bracelet, a Christmas gift from my father. "Next year, we should all go to Bali together," my mother exclaimed. "A family trip." "Family," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. It was the first word I'd spoken in an hour. "What, honey?" my mother asked. "You said family trip, but Derek was family, and he never got to see the ocean." The room went silent. "Leora," my father started. He wanted to go so badly, asked me about it the day before he died, asked if we'd go together when he got better. I looked at my mother. "But you're planning trips to Bali, for the family." Mavis shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we shouldn't talk about sad things on Christmas." I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against their expensive hardwood floor. "Sad things? My son dying is a sad thing we don't mention on Christmas?" "Honey, we know you're grieving," my mother said carefully. "But, do you? Because you've never asked. Not once since the funeral. You sent a Hallmark card and a Target gift card. That's it." My father set down his wineglass. "We didn't want to intrude on your grief." "Intrude? You're my parents. I needed you. I needed you to help save him. I needed you to be there when he died. I needed you to be on time to his funeral." "We've apologized for that," my mother said. "No, you haven't. You've made excuses. There's a difference." I pulled out my phone and opened the document I'd been keeping. I'd printed it earlier, knowing this moment might come. "I want to understand something." I placed the printout on their expensive dining table. "This is the timeline. April through October, every conversation we had about Derek, every expense I know about for the wedding. I need you to help me make sense of it." My father glanced at the papers. "Leora, this isn't... April 15th, I asked for $85,000 to save Derek's life. You said you couldn't afford it. You had to protect your retirement." I looked at him. "Do you remember saying that?" He said nothing. April 29th, Mavis announced her engagement. You told her she could have whatever she wanted. No budget limits. 2 weeks after telling me you couldn't afford to help your dying grandson. "Those situations aren't comparable," my father said. "Aren't they? Let's compare." I flipped a page. May through October. Wedding expenses, venue, $80,000, flowers, $18,000, dress, $14,000, catering, $42,000. Should I continue? "Stop this," my mother said, her voice shaking. "Why? Truth making you uncomfortable?" I looked at Mavis. "Your bachelorette party cost $15,000. That would have paid for 3 months of Derek's medications. Your honeymoon cost $25,000. That would have paid the deposit that locked in his treatment slot." Mavis had tears running down her face. "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. Your wedding cost $240,000, almost 3 times what could have saved Derek's life." "That's not fair." My father stood up. "We made a commitment to your sister. And what about your commitment to your grandson? We chose to honor our obligation to Mavis. That doesn't mean we didn't care about Derek." "Doesn't it?" I laughed bitterly. "You left him dying in a hospital bed to pick centerpieces. You were 35 minutes late to his funeral because of a caterer emergency. You're planning Bali vacations 2 months after he died." My mother was crying now. "What did you want us to do? Cancel everything? Go into debt?" "I wanted you to choose him." The words exploded out of me. "Just once, I wanted you to choose him over appearances, over your precious social standing, over your perfect life. Your sister deserved her special day," my father said, "and Derek deserved to live, but you decided a party was more important." Mavis stood up, her face red. You're just bitter because your life fell apart. You made bad choices, getting pregnant young, choosing a low-paying career, staying with a deadbeat. None of that is our fault. The room froze. I turned to her slowly. You're right. I made choices. I chose to love someone who turned out to be weak. I chose teaching instead of chasing money. I chose to keep Derek when I found out I was pregnant at 24. My voice caught, and I'd make every single one of those choices again, because they gave me 8 years with the most incredible human I've ever known. And tears were streaming down my face. What I didn't choose was having a family who valued parties over people, who let a child die so they didn't have to cancel catering. Get out of my house, my father said. Gladly. I picked up my printout. Merry Christmas. I hope your decorations were worth it. I walked out and never looked back. That was the last time I spoke to any of them for 5 years. The years that followed were wilderness years, a slow, painful rebuilding of a life that had been shattered. I declared bankruptcy in January, wiping out $73,000 in medical debt but destroying my credit for 7 years. I took on every tutoring job I could find, working until 10 at night, saving every penny. Year 2, I was promoted to assistant principal, started a master's program online, still living in that studio apartment, still eating ramen, but saving. I created a new savings account, labeled it Reckoning. I didn't know exactly what I was saving for, just knew I needed power, needed options, needed to never be powerless again. Year 3, Mavis announced her pregnancy on Facebook. My mother's comment, "Our first grandchild, can't wait!" I took a screenshot, added it to my document. Derek had been erased from the family history. Year 4, I became a full principal. Salary jumped to $78,000. I lived on $30,000 and saved the rest. Year 5, I'd saved $120,000. I'd rebuilt myself completely. No longer the desperate mother begging for help, now the woman with options. Then, one April morning, an email arrived from Aunt Cecilia. Leora, I know you don't want to hear from family, but you should know. Your father lost his job 3 months ago in a company bankruptcy scandal. Their retirement was entirely in company stock. It's all gone. They're facing foreclosure. I don't know details, but it's bad. I'm not asking you to do anything. Just thought you deserved to know. I read it 3 times. Then I smiled. The calls started within days. My mother, 6 times that first week. My father, 4. Mavis texted, Mom and Dad need help. Can you please call them? I didn't respond to any of them. Week 3, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw my father. He looked older, grayer, diminished, wearing clothes that weren't pressed. I opened the door but left the chain engaged. What do you want? Leora, thank God. He looked relieved just to see me. I need to talk to you. Can I come in? No, say it from there. He glanced around the hallway, uncomfortable. I lost my job. The company went bankrupt. There's legal issues. I wasn't involved in the fraud, but our retirement was in company stock. It's gone. All of it. And the house is in foreclosure. We owe $95,000. If we can't pay it in 30 days, we lose everything. I felt nothing. Just cold, patient understanding. That's unfortunate. We're asking our daughters for help. Mavis and Elijah are doing what they can, but they have 2 kids now. We thought maybe you could contribute, even a loan. How much do you need total? Hope flickered in his eyes. $95,000, but anything helps. $95,000, that's interesting. I know it's a lot. It's $10,000 more than what could have saved Derek. Silence. I knew you'd bring that up, he said quietly. Did you? And you came anyway? Because I'm desperate. We're going to lose our home. Homes can be replaced. Children can't. Leora, please. I know we made mistakes, but we're your parents. We're family. I'll think about it. His face lit up. You will? I said I'll think about it. Now leave. I closed the door and listened to him walk away. Then I called Aunt Cecilia and got every detail of their situation. 2 weeks later, I called my father back. I've thought about your request. I want to meet. All 3 of you. You, Mom, and Mavis. Of course. When? My apartment. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. We'll be there. Thank you, Leora. Don't thank me yet. They arrived exactly on time, all 3 of them. Dressed nicely, but not expensively. They'd sold their designer clothes. My father in a department store suit, My mother in a Target dress. Mavis nervous, gripping her purse. I'd arranged chairs in my small apartment like an interrogation room. A folder sat on the coffee table. Sit. They sat. I remained standing. You asked for $95,000. Or whatever you can manage. My father started. Let me finish. You're asking for help. Before I decide anything, I need to understand something. I opened the folder, pulled out a document. This is a transcript of our conversation from 5 years ago, April, when I asked you for $85,000 to save Derek's life. You said you couldn't afford it. That you had to protect your retirement. Do you remember? Yes, but I need you to say it. What exactly did you tell me? My father shifted uncomfortably. I said we couldn't deplete our retirement savings. For $85,000 to save your grandson's life. Yes. I pulled out another document. This is the itemized bill from Mavis's wedding planner. Total cost, $240,000. Paid in full by you, 18 months after telling me you couldn't afford $85,000. That's not fair to compare, Mavis started. Why not? It's money. It's choices. You chose to spend 3 times the cost of Derek's life on a party. I placed a photo on the table. Derek in his hospital bed 2 weeks before he died. Do you remember him? They all looked at the photo, crying now. Do you know what he said at the end? He apologized to you for dying before you finished wedding planning. My mother sobbed. Please stop. I pulled out another screenshot. This is your Facebook post, Mom, announcing Sophia's birth. You called her your first grandchild. I didn't mean, my mother tried. You did. You erased him. It was easier than living with what you'd done. My father stood. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine. We're sorry. We made mistakes. Sit down. Something in my voice made him obey. I'm going to give you the money. My mother gasped. Oh, thank God. But there are conditions. First condition, I said, pulling out my checkbook. You acknowledge right here, right now, that you chose Mavis's wedding over Derek's life. Say it out loud. Leora, that's humiliating, my father protested. More humiliating than begging for money to save your child while your family plans parties? Say it or leave with nothing. The silence stretched. They looked at each other, calculating, desperate. Finally, my father spoke, his voice barely audible. We chose the wedding. Then louder. We chose to spend money on Mavis's wedding instead of Derek's treatment. His voice broke. And he died because we didn't help. I turned to my mother. And you? She was sobbing. We should have saved him. We had the money. We chose wrong. Mavis? My sister looked at her hands. I didn't know it would, but I should have. I was selfish. Second condition. I pulled out another document. You sign this. It's a no contact agreement. After today, you never call me, text me, or reach out in any way. No birthday cards, no Christmas gifts, nothing. I become what you made Derek, someone who never existed. Leora, no, my mother pleaded. Those are my terms. You taught me that family is conditional, that love has limits. I'm just applying your rules. Please, my father said, don't ask us to. You have 60 seconds. Take the check and sign the agreement or leave with nothing. They looked at each other. 43 seconds of whispered conversation. Then my father said, we accept. I wrote the check, $95,000, slid it across the table with the agreement. Sign. They signed with shaking hands. I handed them the check. You can go now. Leora, my father tried. You agreed to the terms. No contact means no contact. Leave. They filed out. My father clutching the check, my mother crying, Mavis looking back once. I closed the door. Then I opened my laptop. The document, the price, was now 63 pages. I'd spent 5 years documenting everything, every conversation, every expense, every choice they'd made. I wrote a cover letter addressed to 60 people, family, friends, their church, their former colleagues, the email that would destroy their reputation completely. My finger hovered over the send button, one click, and everyone would know what they were. But then I thought about Derek, about what he'd said at the end. Tell Grandma and Grandpa I'm sorry. Even dying, he'd loved them. I wrote a different email instead. Mom, Dad, and Mavis, you have your money. You'll keep your house, but know this. I have a complete record of everything that happened. 63 pages, ready to send to everyone who knows you. One click and your reputation is destroyed, but I'm not going to send it. Not because I forgive you, I don't. I never will, but because Derek loved you even when you didn't deserve it, and I loved him more than I'll ever hate you. So here's my gift. Mercy you never gave him. Every day for the rest of your lives, you'll know I could have buried you the way you buried my son, and I chose not to. That's the difference between us. Goodbye. I sent that email. Then I deleted the other one. 5 years later, a letter arrived from Florida. My mother's handwriting. Leora, your father died 3 months ago. Heart attack. Before he passed, he told me, tell Leora she was right about all of it. I think about Derek every day, every single day. I live with what we did. We sold the house 2 years after you saved it. Couldn't bear living there. Your father worked until last year. Mavis and I aren't close anymore. Too much guilt between us. I hope you found peace. Derek deserved a mother like you. I'm sorry we weren't the grandparents he deserved. With love and regret, Mom. I read it once, folded it, put it in a box labeled Derek's Things. Then I drove to Forest Lawn Cemetery. Derek's grave had a beautiful headstone now. I'd had it installed 3 years ago when I could finally afford it. Derek Morgan, beloved son, 2016 to 2024. He wanted to see the ocean. Hey, baby, I said, sitting beside the stone. Grandpa died. I don't know how I feel about that. The wind rustled through the trees. I went to the ocean for you 5 times now. Different beaches. I scatter blue flowers each time. Your favorite color. I placed fresh flowers by the headstone. I started a foundation last year. Derek's Dream Fund. We've helped 12 kids get treatments their families couldn't afford. Saved 12 lives in your name. Tears slid down my face. You'd be 18 now, graduating high school. I think about who you'd have become, what you'd have studied, whether you'd have become that marine biologist you dreamed of being. I touched the stone. They paid for what they did, not with money, with their souls. They're hollow people now, living with ghosts. I hope that's enough. I hope wherever you are, you know I tried. I tried to save you, and when I couldn't, I made sure your life meant something. I stood to leave, kissed my fingers, pressed them to his name. I love you, Derek. I'm living for both of us now. Promise. As I walked to my car, the sun broke through the clouds, and for just a moment, I could almost smell salt air, almost hear waves, almost see him, my beautiful boy, finally running free on a beach somewhere. No oxygen tank, no monitors, just pure joy. Find your ocean, baby, I whispered. I'll see you there someday. Thank you so much for staying with me through this journey. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but stories like this need to be told. They remind us what really matters in life, not the parties, not the appearances, but the people we love and the choices we make for them. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own priorities or your own family, please consider subscribing to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, call the people you love. Tell them they matter. Don't wait until it's too late. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being here.